You'll hear a lot of people talk about this is called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And so it's really just saying that overall as people, we're not being as active as we used to. So in terms of all of this translation with the myth that it's your metabolism is broken, I think the translation here is that it's not one workout that's going to work for you. It's how you live all the time, that you're doing some strength training per week, that you're able to move most days of the week rather than being sedentary. Welcome to the Whole Health Empowerment Project podcast. This show is for women over 40 who are trying to create balance in their life when it comes to food, body, self-care, and wellness. You struggle to put yourself first, to maintain consistency when something isn't perfect, or maybe you feel like you don't have enough time or willpower to achieve the goals you desire. I'm your host, Tricia Stefankowitz, registered dietitian, nutritionist. I've worked with women like you achieve their goals by focusing on the next best step, no matter how messy, and meeting you where you are right now. In this show, you'll learn practical information, actionable strategies, and mindset tweaks so that you can feel healthier, more comfortable in your body, and make choices that work for your life. Come join me in failing forward, one imperfect step at a time, into the journey of health, wellness, and self-care. Welcome to your new project. Hey ladies, welcome back to the podcast. I am so happy to have you here today. And if you're someone who's been feeling like your body has changed, like what used to work just doesn't anymore, or maybe you're even wondering, like, is it just me that this is happening to, or is this happening to every woman that you know? I want you to hear this right away. It's not you, and your body's not broken. But there are some beliefs that may be keeping you stuck without even realizing it. Today, we're going to break down the biggest weight loss myths for women over 40. And more importantly, we're going to talk about what's actually going on in your body so that you can start to figure out strategies of what to do instead of relying on what you may have done in the past that's no longer working for you. Before we start getting into the myths, let's just acknowledge something that is real, that's happening, that weight loss or maintaining your health after 40 feels very different in this season. And that's because you're different, your body's different, your hormones are up and down, they're shifting. As we age, our muscle mass naturally declines. We become oftentimes more sedentary because of all the stuff happening in our life. And stress may be a lot higher for you than it was in your 20s. Sleep is lower and life is pretty full. So if you've been trying to use the same strategies that you used in your 20s and your 30s, of course it feels frustrating because life is completely different and you're using strategies that may have worked at that time when your environment was different, your life was different, and your body was different. But I want you to know that you're not failing. You're just using a strategy that no longer matches with the phase of life that you're in. So some of the myths we'll talk about today, we have 6 different myths we'll go into and we'll kind of talk about and see if any of these resonate with you. And then we can start to break down those myths and talk about strategies that may work a little bit better. Myth number 1. My metabolism is broken because I'm over 40. When women say this, what they usually mean is, I'm eating the same, but I'm either not losing weight or I'm gaining weight. Usually other women will think, I feel like my body is working against me and what used to work doesn't work anymore. And that is so frustrating. But here's the truth. Your metabolism isn't broken. It's more sensitive to how you're living. And there are things that are happening in your body that are different than when you were 20 and 30. After 40, and this is just a very broad number, 40, because there's, everyone's living in different things that are happening at 40. But as we age, you naturally lose muscle, right? You naturally lose muscle, which burns calories. So if we have less muscle, we don't burn as many calories. You are likely moving less without even realizing it. And then you have these hormones that are fluctuating and they make your body more protective to store fat. So it feels like your metabolism may have stopped, but really your body just needs something different to handle the changes that are happening. So let's talk about what actually works. And I feel like in this whole perimenopause, menopause world, you'll hear these strategies. It's not going to be anything new, but we'll just kind of talk about it a little bit more. First, strength training. Why is this important? Why are you hearing about it everywhere? Well, muscle is metabolically active tissue. The more you have, the more calories you burn, even at rest. As women, we tend to be in this cycle where we're gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight. Most of the time when you are losing weight, especially if your protein isn't adequate, and think about the times when you were younger that maybe you ate really low calorie and that's the way that you were trying to lose weight, right? Well, when you lose weight, you don't just lose fat mass, you also lose muscle mass. As you start to lose muscle mass, that metabolically active tissue is less and you burn less calories. So that's why strength training is, especially as you get older, with the aging process where you're losing muscle, perhaps you're not as active as you previously were. And so you're not having anything that's helping rebuild that metabolic activity to kind of jumpstart and give you at rest to be able to burn more calories. When you lift weights, you're sending your body this signal like we need to preserve the muscle that you have, because that's really the goal here. It's not even building more muscle. I think the first goal here is preserving what you already have and making sure that you don't lose the muscle mass that you have, and that as you age and as you work on it, you're able to build muscle over time. And that's why you hear a lot, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, about protein intake. Because if you're someone who's losing weight, either in a calorie deficit or using a GLP-1, if you're losing weight again, you're going to lose fat mass and muscle mass. So the goal is that you can preserve that lean body mass as you are losing weight. And one way to do that is to make sure that you're eating enough protein, because protein isn't about just eating healthy. You're eating that because you're trying to preserve that lean body mass that you may otherwise have lost if you are just in a calorie deficit without getting enough protein. So when we're talking about strength training, your body is responding by increasing energy intake, right? And that strength training is really going to help counteract any of the age-related muscle loss that would happen. But if you're increasing strength training, you also need to kind of look at what you're doing in terms of your protein intake, because you're now trying to have more metabolically active tissue. And so you need to preserve what you already have. So in terms of if you're trying to lose weight and if you're in a calorie deficit, to tie this all together, you need to make sure that you're eating enough protein to counteract any of the muscle loss that would happen, or at least to slow it down so that you can lose the weight, but also preserve the lean body mass, which is going to be the most important thing, especially as you age. As you age, you want to make sure that you're preserving any lean body mass that you have for functional capacity, for longevity, just for everyday life activities. And then hopefully over time, if you're able to strength train and to preserve what you have, that then you can also start to build on that and build real muscle mass. So that, again, I think over 40, the goal is different. It's not about, how do I look? It's about making sure that you can continue to do the things that you're doing today in terms of your functional capacity, and that you can walk the way that you want to as you age, and that you're strong enough to do the activities that you can do as you age. And so that's why strength training is important. It helps you maintain what you already have and to preserve the lean body mass. And then over time to maybe even help build it up so that you can continue with that longevity and continue with the strength that you have today. And then remembering that if you're really focusing on your metabolism, that's when protein comes into play. Protein is going to help preserve the lean body mass that you already have, and then over time build muscle, especially if you're doing strength training. Protein helps repair and build your muscle tissue, keeps you fuller longer. So a lot of times you'll hear people talking about how much protein you need and how protein is important for a woman who has hormonal changes. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, have 30 grams of protein, which each meal. And if you are eating 3 meals, you get 90 grams of protein. Or I also hear people say, oh, you need like a pound of protein for every pounds of body fat. I never learned that. What I was always told and what I follow with my patients is that you have your weight, you divide it by 2.2, and then you times that by 1. That's about how much protein you need. So if you are a 180-pound woman, divide that by 2.2. That would give you about 81.8 kilos. You need about 80 grams of protein a day. If you are somebody who is 200 pounds, your weight divided by 2.2, your requirement would be about 90 grams of protein a day. And so I think really just making sure that you have protein in every meal is going to be important, and making sure that you can do the 30 grams of protein per meal. It can be helpful because it can help maintain your lean body mass, but it will also help you feeling fuller longer. And that's what's really important, that you're able to kind of do both. And so protein does help. But if you feel like you're not getting enough, I would just say try to get the minimum for your body weight, which is maybe you need 80 or maybe you need 90, or maybe you just focus on getting 30 per meal. I see all these people out there and they're talking about 150 grams of protein and, 200 grams of protein. And in my practice, it's very hard for women to get that and then to do all the other things that we're all trying to do. So I just try to make it really simple, because I've made that mistake where then women feel like they're failing because I've set this really high protein goal that they may not even need. And so what I would say is make sure you get protein in every meal. If you can focus on getting 30 grams of protein, that's where you're going to do better probably at most meals. But if you don't achieve that, that's okay too. Just try to eat that you're getting like a pretty decent amount of protein at meals. And then I wouldn't worry about all the other stuff. If you're strength training and you're training heavy, your protein needs may actually increase, but I would just kind of start somewhere simple. And then once you have that strategy down, then kind of add on to it as you need. And then the third thing here in terms of what actually works is daily movement. Fixing that invisible slowdown. A lot of this metabolic decline, or how many calories we need, how it gets less as we get older. Some of it is related to our lean body mass, but also some of it is from we don't walk as much as we used to. We have this thing that we're just not really doing as much as we used to. We're just not active as a population. And that can vary by hundreds of calories per day. And so it will have an impact. You'll hear a lot of people talk about, this is called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And so it's really just saying that overall as people, we're not being as active as we used to. So in terms of all of this translation with the myth that it's your metabolism is broken, I think the translation here is that it's not one workout that's going to work for you. It's how you live all the time, that you're doing some strength training per week, that you're able to move most days of the week rather than being sedentary. The second myth here is that weight gain is inevitable after menopause. And so many women start to feel like no matter what I do, my belly keeps growing. I feel out of control in my body. And there is some reality in that you have these hormonal shifts as you start to enter menopause or perimenopause. And the big hormonal shift here is that you have a declining estrogen level. With estrogen, it helps regulate where your body is stored. It helps appetite. It helps with insulin sensitivity. So when your estrogen starts to drop, or when it starts to dip, or when it starts to change, your body becomes more likely to store fat around the midsection. But the key here is that hormones influence weight, but they don't completely control it. So there are some things that you can do, even though your estrogen is declining, even though there are some things that are happening outside of you that you can't control. A big thing here would be blood sugar balance. When we talk about blood sugar, you're thinking of it as like, do I have diabetes? Or if you're wearing a continuous glucose monitor, you're able to see where your blood sugar is during the day and the impact that food has on those blood sugar levels. And why blood sugar balance is important is it controls fat storage signals. When your blood sugar spikes, your insulin rises, your fat storage increases, and your overall cravings start to follow that. And after 40, your body is less forgiving of these spikes. And as a side note here, when I'm talking about over 40, I just mean like if you're in this phase where you're having changes in your hormones, and that could be at any age. So essentially, if your blood sugar is all out of whack, you're going to have these different cravings. You're going to have things that are happening in your body that you may not see. And so if you're able to do little things like pair your carbs with your protein or fat, eat balanced meals, it's going to really start to stabilize your blood sugar. You know, if you were diabetic, you may have heard, make every time you eat something that has a carb in it, make sure you eat a protein. The point of that is because you're going to prevent these spikes from happening with your blood sugar. Your blood sugar is not going to go up and down because hopefully the protein is going to help stabilize it. And so what happens here is kind of the same thing. It's you're trying to make sure that you're pairing every protein or every carb that you eat with some protein, especially if the carb that you're eating is a carb that's going to be more likely to increase your blood sugar. So if you're eating chips, if you're eating pretzels, if you're eating something that doesn't have fiber in it, that's going to probably more likely increase your blood sugar. This is where fiber becomes important because fiber will help keep your blood sugar stable for longer as opposed to having these spikes that are happening in your body. And one way you're going to know if you're having blood sugar balance is if your doctor does a hemoglobin A1C. And that test will usually give you like a 3-month determinant of where your blood sugar has been. And typically it'll come back that you're pre-diabetic, you have diabetes, or you're perfectly fine. And so I would kind of look at those tests to see where you're at. If you have pre-diabetes, you're probably having some kind of spikes with your blood sugar that are higher than we would like them to be. And so your goal here is to make sure it doesn't go into diabetes. And one of the ways that you can do that is by looking at the content of the carbs you're consuming, making sure it has more fiber in those carbs is going to be helpful. But then also pairing it with a protein should help stabilize your blood sugar. And if you're somebody who has diabetes, the same thing, although you may also be using some kind of medication to help you with that. In addition to your blood sugar, with weight gain, it's making sure that you're able to be consistent. Your body, as your hormones change, really thrives on being predictable. So don't skip your meals. Try to have eating patterns that are consistent. And try to stop that yo-yo dieting where you're going to have periods where your blood sugar may be high, periods where your blood sugar may be low. Trying to tell your body that it's safe. You don't need to store extra fat. You don't need to do that because you're having regular meals and your meals are consistently having some kind of protein and some kind of carb, and it's keeping your body stable. And then also controlling your stress, which is a really big one. We know that if you're able to control your stress, you can lower your cortisol. So if you have, and you are somebody who is in a chronic stress state, that this is going to promote belly fat storage. It's going to increase your cravings for sugar that feels really good and mostly carbs. And then also it's going to disrupt your sleep. So if you're able to manage your stress, that's what's going to be foundational here. If you're able to just kind of get that under control, you're going to prevent that increase in cortisol that you don't want. That's going to lead to belly fat storage. Myth number 3, eat less and exercise more. This often turns into under eating all day, over exercise, feeling exhausted and frustrating because most likely you're not going to see the weight loss that you're trying to get. And then you'll have an increase in your cravings, and overall you may feel less motivated because you're not getting the results that you want. Knowing here that this isn't because of a lack of effort on your part, it's related to there's so much stress that you're placing on your body. When you are in a calorie deficit, your body is going to slow metabolism to conserve energy. Your hormones are going to shift so that you can increase hunger. It's the survival method. And your fat loss is going to become much harder. If you have a moderate deficit, it allows fat loss without triggering your survival mode, and it keeps your energy and hormones more stable. So I think it's like if you're trying to lose weight and you decide, oh, I'm going to go on 1,000-calorie diet, that's probably not going to work. If you're able to have some kind of calorie deficit, but not a huge calorie deficit, while also increasing your physical activity, that'll probably work a little bit better. So maybe instead of going to 1,000 calories, you go to 1,200 or 1,400 calories so that you're able to have some kind of weight loss, but not enough that it's going to really trigger you to be in survival mode. So let's talk about what actually works. Moderate calorie deficit is going to work for you. So if you are somebody who is going to extremes in terms of calories, which you may have done in the past, it's probably not going to work because your calories are too low. Your body slows metabolism to conserve energy. Fat loss becomes harder. Your hormones are going to increase. You're going to be more hungry. So instead of going on an 1,000-calorie and 800-calorie diet, how many calories you need in a day is going to vary. And there are a lot of different formulas out there that are going to tell you what you need in a day. And you can even Google weight loss calculator and they'll kind of give you something. But I think it's really just trying to figure out how many calories you need to maintain your current weight and then deduct like 300 calories from that. So if you are somebody who needs 1,800 calories a day in order to maintain your weight, deducting maybe 300 calories from that in terms of your calories. So you would need maybe 1,500 calories, and then also increasing your physical activity. It all really just depends on where you're at, just in terms of your overall health. Because even if you're doing that you're creating a calorie deficit, you're going to be able to lose some kind of weight. But remembering that you want to make sure that you're not being too crazy with your calories because you need to preserve your lean body mass that you have to, or else you kind of get in this place where it's not equal and you're working harder, but you're not going to see the same results. I think also doing strength and some kind of walking combo is probably pretty helpful. If you're doing too much cardio, you may become burnout. You may have this increases in your hunger, and it just might raise your cortisol levels. So if you're able to do strength training, which is also going to help build muscle, then you're going to be able to have some fat loss here too. So it's not just focusing on one thing, it's focusing on like, okay, let me be more active during the day and then also put some strength training in there. And then also making sure that you get adequate sleep is going to help here, because if you're not eating enough, if you're not making sure that you get adequate sleep is helpful here too, because poor sleep affects your hunger and fullness hormones. It regulates these hunger hormones. So if you don't get enough sleep, you may feel hungrier and less satisfied. Myth number 4, carbs are the enemy. What women often think this is carbs make me gain weight. I feel out of control around them. But the issue isn't carbs, it's what kind of carbs you're consuming. If you're able to eat carbs, we've already talked about this, but usually things that have fiber in them. So if you were to look at the nutrition label and if you see that there's fiber in that particular carbohydrate that you're eating, that's what's going to help you more. It's going to improve your gut health and your overall hormone health. It's going to help with feelings of fullness. And it's also just going to help with the slowing down of the glucose absorption. So you're not going to have those spikes in your blood sugar. Remembering that not all carbs are equal, that you're trying to get a little bit of more fiber to help with that gut microbiome and then also with that feeling of fullness. And then every time you're eating a carb, especially something that's going to be a little higher carb, knowing that you pair it with either a protein or fat to avoid energy crashes, to slow digestion, and to have better appetite control. Myth number 5, if I'm not losing weight, I'm failing. Well, this is an all or nothing translation. It's that if I'm doing all of these things, but I'm not getting the outcome that I want. So a lot of times that leads to you give up too soon, all or nothing thinking, frustration. But after 40, progress is often less visible, but it still may be happening. So you may have you might not see it in your body, but maybe you go to the doctor and your hemoglobin A1C is better. Maybe you feel better. You may not see the visible signs on your outside body, but then on the inside, your blood work, maybe how you feel, your mood, all of those things are better. And so remembering here that you are going to have a body recomposition. You could have some fat loss without a scale change. You can lose fat, gain muscle. You may stay the same weight because your fat mass may be less, but your muscle gain may be more. So really kind of looking at the bigger picture and looking at how your body looks and not really relying on the scale, which isn't going to be able to see any of the positive gains that you may have had in terms of fat loss and muscle gain. Looking at the non-scale wins here and reinforcing consistency. When you notice that you're sleeping better, you have more energy, your clothes are fitting differently, that's what's going to be more likely to keep you consistent. And consistency is what's going to drive the health changes that you are striving for. It's not just about losing weight at this age, it's your overall health and being consistent and finding these little things along the way that you can see that are improving is what's going to help you maintain that habit and maintain that consistency. And then the last myth here is that you need more willpower. This belief drives me insane, and I felt this way for the longest time, where I felt like I didn't have enough more willpower. I had a lot of shame around how I looked, what I was eating. And what it caused me to do, which it may be causing you to do, is to have this self-blame dialogue in your head. And then that you find yourself in this pattern where you're consistently and repeatedly starting over. But the truth here is that your environment and the systems that you put into place to help you, such as having meal prep and having routines and go-to meals, having your vitamins, drinking enough water, just these things that you do on a daily basis, that's what's going to help you the most, more so than motivation. It's going to help you, if you have some systems in place, make healthier choices automatically. It's going to reduce that overwhelm because your life is full with work and family and all the other responsibilities that you may have. So in this time of your life, instead of relying on motivation, relying on habits that can help maintain consistency, and then also your environment that you feel like you have something that you're doing these small changes that is accessible to you, that makes the things that you're trying to achieve become easier, and that you're able to be more consistent without trying harder. And the environment here is going to be different for everybody. Some of the systems that I put into place are I meal prep every Sunday. I have And that varies according to what my week looks like. I have a day where my son and he's super busy with sports, and I allow that day that we'll pick something quick and easy up. We most of the time eat meals at home. I prepare meals and bring it into work. In terms of exercise, I try to do it first thing in the morning because if I don't, oftentimes I fail. For any medications or vitamins that I want to take, I do it on a Sunday. I put them in these little cups, and then each day I can just grab those little cups of vitamins, and it keeps me consistent. Everybody has something that works for them that's able to keep them consistent with the habit that they're doing. And I know right now you may think you're not doing anything, but you do have some habit that you're doing that's helping you be consistent. And it's looking at what that is and how you continue to utilize that. You may have something that you do that gets you out of the house at a certain time every day. It's something that you may not even know that you're doing, but you have a system in place. So again, not really relying on this idea that you're not motivated enough, but really you're putting systems into place that are supporting you, that can help you maintain that consistency and not make you rely on willpower. So the takeaways here in this very long episode is that weight loss after 40 isn't about doing more. It's about doing what actually works for your body now. It's acknowledging that you have these changes happening with your body. It's about supporting your muscle. It's about supporting and stabilizing your blood sugar, reducing stress, which is a very hard one to do, but at least maybe reducing how you respond to the stress, because there's always going to be stress in our lives. And then I think the more important thing is trying to figure out how to build consistency around the habits that are going to get you to whatever goal you are trying to achieve. You don't need more willpower. You need to be more consistent. If you take one thing from today, let it be this. Your body isn't broken. You don't need to try harder. You need to try differently. It's not about extremes. It's about supporting your body, working with what's happening with your hormones today, and building habits that fit into your life today. Not what fit into your life 20 years ago when your life was completely different, but what would work for today. And when you start to do that, everything else will feel more doable to you. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with another woman who needs to hear it. I thank you again for listening today, and I will see you back here next week. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found value in this podcast, please rate, review, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends. Together, we can take tiny, imperfect steps towards creating the whole health we desire and deserve. Don't forget to grab your freebie. You can find the link in your show notes or over at triciard.com. I'll see you back here next week.